Right now, Costco is suing the United States government, not because they want to, but because if they don't, they'll lose billions while their competitors get rich. The government created a trap, and Costco had no choice. Let me show you exactly what's happening. Trump imposed tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, Canada, dozens of countries. Companies paid billions at U.S. ports, then raised your prices to cover it. You paid those higher prices all year without even knowing it. Now the Supreme Court is about to rule, and they might say, those tariffs were unconstitutional all along, which means refund time. But here's the trap nobody's talking about. Only companies that sued the government can get refunds. If you didn't file a lawsuit, if you missed the deadline, you get nothing. Even if the Supreme Court declares the tariffs illegal. Even if every other company gets billions back. Too late. So Costco filed on November 28, 2025. Not because they're making a political statement. It's because if they don't sue and their competitor does, that competitor gets $1 billion refund. They can undercut Costco's prices, steal customers, win. Costco had to sue to survive. And they're not alone. In the past 6 weeks, dozens of companies filed identical lawsuits. Toyota sued. Kawasaki sued. The company that makes Ray-Ban sunglasses sued. Wine importers, board game makers, fishing tackle shops, all filing in November 2025. All for the same reason. Protect their right to refunds or get destroyed by competitors who did. But here's what you need to understand about your situation. While these companies might get billions back from the Treasury, you get nothing. You already paid the higher prices. Every grocery trip this year, every purchase at Target, Home Depot, Amazon. You paid extra because of tariffs. That money is gone from your bank account. The refunds flow to corporations, not to you. This is wealth transfer on a scale America has never seen. Let me paint you 2 pictures of what's happening right now. Picture 1. It's Saturday afternoon at Costco. Families pushing oversized carts down the aisles, loading up on bulk toilet paper, rotisserie chickens, giant jars of peanut butter, swiping membership cards they've held for 10, 20 years. Trust on their faces. They have no idea what's coming. Picture 2. Federal courthouse in Manhattan, 3,000 miles away. Costco's lawyers filing a 17-page lawsuit, demanding the government declare tariffs illegal, demanding refunds that could total billions. These 2 worlds are about to collide. Here's the scale we're talking about. The government could owe $750 billion to $1 trillion in refunds. That number comes from Trump's own Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, not from opponents. From the administration itself, warning in court filings, if we lose, this could hit $1 trillion. And here's the nightmare scenario. The government doesn't have that money sitting in a vault. They already spent it. Social Security checks went out. Military salaries got paid. Interest on the debt got paid. That money is gone. So if the Supreme Court orders $750 billion in refunds, where does it come from? 4 options, all terrible. Cut government spending by $750 billion immediately. Raise taxes by $750 billion. Borrow another $750 billion. Or print $750 billion. Pick your disaster. And you're the one who pays for it. Now let me tell you why Costco suing matters so much. They're not a typical corporation. They lose $40 million a year selling rotisserie chickens for $5. The hot dog and soda combo has been $1.50 since 1985. When tariffs hit bananas from Central America earlier this year, every other grocery chain raised prices. Costco kept them flat. They absorbed millions in tariff costs themselves. Customer first, always. That's the Costco way. So when a company famous for protecting customers is forced into federal court to sue the government, you know something has gone terribly wrong with the system. There's a deadline driving all of this. December 15th, 2025, less than 2 weeks away. Companies that don't sue by then lose their refund rights forever. The door slams shut. That's why lawsuits flooded the courts right after November 5th. That's when the Supreme Court heard arguments. And everyone who sat in that courtroom heard the same thing. The justices weren't politely skeptical. They were hostile. Conservative and liberal justices both tore the government's case apart. The lawyer couldn't answer basic constitutional questions. Trump is going to lose this case. And when that ruling drops, $750 billion explodes into the economy. Companies get billions in refunds. You get nothing. Banks panic. Markets crash. Jobs start disappearing. Savings evaporate. But before we get to that catastrophe, you need to understand something fundamental. How do these tariffs actually work? Who really pays them? Because you've been told China pays the tariffs. Foreign countries pay. This doesn't cost Americans a cent. That's a lie. And I'm going to prove it to you with simple math right now. Trump told you China pays the tariffs. That's a lie. And I can prove it to you in 60 seconds. Here's what actually happens when tariffs hit a product. Step 1. A U.S. company imports goods from China. Step 2. The ship arrives at a U.S. port. Step 3. Customs forces the American company to pay a tax before unloading. Step 4. The company raises prices to recover that cost. Step 5. You pay the higher price at the store. China doesn't pay a single dollar. The American importer pays the tax at the port. Then you pay it back through higher prices at the register. This is simple math. Let me prove it with one specific purchase you might have made. A television. Scenario A, without tariffs. Chinese factory sells TV to U.S. retailer for $400. Retailer needs 75% markup to cover operating costs and make profit. You walk into Best Buy and pay $700. Done. Scenario B with 25% tariff. Same exact TV, same $400 cost from the factory. But now when it arrives at the port, customs says, hold on, pay us $100 in tariff before we release this. Retailer pays that $100, their total cost is now $500. They still need the same 75% markup to stay in business, so they charge you $875. You just paid $175 extra for the exact same television. That $175 didn't go to China. It came straight out of your wallet. One TV, one purchase. $175 gone. Now multiply this across everything you bought in 2025. Groceries up 2.8% because of tariffs on imported food. Clothing up 17%, the category hit hardest. Electronics up 10 to 15% across the board. Cars up $4,000 on an average new vehicle. The Yale Budget Lab did the full calculation. Average American household lost $3,800 in 2025. From tariffs alone. Low-income families lost $1,700. That's a month's rent for many people. Just vanished into higher prices you never voted for, never approved, probably never even noticed. And here's where this gets worse. The damage isn't over. The St. Louis Federal Reserve published a study in October 2025. They found tariffs added 0.5 percentage point to inflation. Import prices are running 4% above normal levels. And here's the scary part. Only 50% of tariff costs have hit consumers so far. Read that again, only half. The other half is still sitting in supply chains somewhere, still waiting to flow through to your grocery bill next month, your rent next quarter, your car payment next year. It's coming. So what changed in 2025? Early in the year, businesses thought tariffs were temporary. They absorbed the costs, squeezed their profit margins, hoped it would end soon. By August, they realized these tariffs aren't going away, so they started raising your prices. The Boston Fed tracked this shift. Early 2025, businesses were passing through 33% of costs to customers. August 2025, now passing through 50%. That increase is happening right now while you're reading this. The government collected $195 billion in tariffs in fiscal year 2025. That's up 250% from the previous year. October 2025 alone set a record, $34 billion in a single month. Where did every single dollar come from? American companies writing checks at American ports. And where did those companies get the money? From you. Higher prices at every store you shop. You've been paying this tax all year without even knowing it. And now comes the part that should make you absolutely furious. Those companies that raised prices on you, they're about to get refunds from the government. Walmart paid billions in tariffs, raised prices on you to cover it, collected that extra money from millions of customers, now gets billions back from the Treasury. Target, same thing. Amazon, same thing. Costco, same thing. They all get paid twice. Once by you when you shopped in 2025. Once by the government when refunds come in 2026. You get paid 0 times. You're out $3,800 that's never coming back. They pocket billions in refunds. Do they lower prices back down to pre-tariff levels? No. Do they send you a refund check for the extra you paid? No. They keep every penny. The refund from the government, plus all the extra money they collected from you. This isn't a bug in the system. This isn't an accident. This is wealth transfer by design. From your wallet straight to corporate bank accounts. And it's about to accelerate. Because when those refunds hit, companies won't lower prices. Why would they? You're already paying the higher prices. You've accepted them as the new normal. Prices are sticky, They shoot up fast when costs rise. They drift down slow, if ever, when costs fall. So corporations pocket the refunds, pass them to shareholders as bigger dividends, pass them to executives as bigger bonuses. And you just keep paying the inflated prices, month after month. This is the largest upward wealth transfer in American history. Trillions of dollars flowing from working families to corporate balance sheets. And most people have no idea it's even happening. But now you know. You know who really pays tariffs. You know exactly how much you've already lost. And you know that refunds flow to corporations while you get absolutely nothing. So what are you going to do about it? You can't stop the refunds, but you can protect yourself from what comes next. First, though, you need to understand why Costco was forced to sue the government, because what happened to them reveals just how broken this entire system really is. Now let me show you why Costco had no choice but to sue, because this is where you see how broken the system really is. Costco isn't like other retailers. Their entire business model is built on one principle: keep prices low, treat customers right. They operate on an 11% gross margin. Walmart runs at 24%. Target runs at 28%. Costco makes almost nothing on the products they sell. Their profit comes from one source: membership fees. You pay $65 a year for that card. That's where their money comes from. Not from marking up bananas or chicken, from your loyalty. And they've earned that loyalty by protecting you, even when it costs them millions. Let me give you a real example from May 2025. Tariffs hit bananas and pineapples from Central America. Every other grocery chain in America raised prices immediately. Kroger raised prices. Safeway raised prices. Walmart raised prices. Costco didn't. Their CFO, Gary Millerchip, explained what they did instead. They went to suppliers and found efficiencies in the supply chain. They accepted lower margins on their own bottom line. They kept banana prices flat. They kept pineapple prices flat. They absorbed millions in tariff costs themselves to protect you. Now on flowers, which are discretionary purchases, they did raise prices slightly. But on essential items, the things families need, they took the hit. That's the Costco way. They lose $40 million a year selling rotisserie chickens for $5. The hot dog and soda combo has been $1.50 since 1985. Customer first, always. But now, they're trapped. Here's the impossible situation they're in. The Supreme Court is about to rule on whether Trump's tariffs are legal. If Trump wins, the tariffs stay. Life goes on. Costco keeps absorbing what they can. If Trump loses, the tariffs get struck down as unconstitutional. Companies can file for refunds. But here's the trap that forces them to sue. Only companies that filed lawsuits can get refunds. If you didn't sue, you get nothing. Even if the Supreme Court says the tariffs were illegal all along. Even if your competitor across the street gets billions back. If you didn't file the paperwork, too bad, you're out. So Costco looks at two options. Option A: don't sue, hope Trump wins at the Supreme Court. If he wins, nothing changes. Everyone moves on. But if he loses and Costco didn't sue, they watch their competitors get billions in refunds, while Costco gets zero. Those competitors can now undercut Costco's prices with their windfall cash. Steal Costco's customers. Win the market. Option B: sue the government right now. Protect the company's right to refunds if Trump loses. But risk political backlash. Risk angering customers who support Trump. Risk becoming a target. This isn't a normal business decision. This is Russian roulette with billions of dollars on the table. And there's a clock ticking. December 15th, 2025. That's when Costco's imports start to liquidate through customs. Once liquidation happens, the duties become final and permanent. No appeals, no refunds. Locked in forever. Even if the Supreme Court later says they were illegal. Costco asked Customs and Border Protection for an extension. Give us more time to see how the Supreme Court rules. Let us make an informed decision. On November 18th, CBP's answer came back. No extension. The message was crystal clear: sue us now or lose your rights forever. And it wasn't theoretical. One of Costco's import entries had already liquidated by then. That money is gone. They can't get it back no matter what the Supreme Court says. So on November 28th, 2025, Costco filed, not because they wanted to fight the government, not because they're making some political statement against Trump, because the math gave them absolutely no choice. Think about what this means. Costco, the company famous for keeping prices low. The company that absorbs costs to protect customers. The company with a 93% membership renewal rate because customers trust them. That company is in federal court suing the government. If Costco is forced to sue, you know something is seriously wrong. And they're not alone in this. Toyota filed the exact same lawsuit. Kawasaki filed. The company that makes Ray-Ban sunglasses filed. Wine importers from California. Board game companies from Minnesota. Fishing tackle shops. Dozens of companies that have never sued the federal government in their entire existence. All filing lawsuits in the past 6 weeks. All saying the same thing. These tariffs are illegal. We want our money back. These aren't political activists. These are businesses trying to survive. And here's what should tell you everything. They didn't file these lawsuits in January. They didn't file in June. They all filed right now, November 2025, right after the Supreme Court hearing on November 5th. Why? Because everyone who sat in that courtroom that day saw the same thing. The justices weren't politely skeptical. They were openly hostile to the government's case. Conservative justices and liberal justices both tore the arguments apart. The government's lawyer couldn't answer basic questions. Everyone left that courtroom thinking the same thing. Trump is going to lose. And that's why dozens of companies raced to file lawsuits before the December 15th deadline. They're protecting their rights before the window slams shut. So what exactly happened in that Supreme Court hearing? What did the justices say that convinced all these companies to sue? Because what happened in that courtroom on November 5th is going to determine who gets $750 billion and who gets nothing. November 5th, 2025. The Supreme Court hears arguments on whether Trump's tariffs are legal. What happened in that courtroom should terrify the Trump administration, because both conservative and liberal justices tore their case to pieces. Let me walk you through exactly what went down. The case is about a law called IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Congress passed it in 1977 to handle genuine national emergencies. It lets the president freeze terrorist assets, block financial transactions with enemy nations, stop weapons technology exports. That's what IEEPA was built for. What IEEPA was never used for in 50 years, imposing tariffs on imports. Not during the Cold War, not after 9/11, not during the 2008 financial crisis. Trump is the first president to try this, and the Supreme Court justices noticed immediately. Chief Justice John Roberts spoke first. Here's his exact quote from the transcript. "The vehicle is imposition of taxes on Americans, and that has always been the core power of Congress." Read that again. Tariffs are taxes. Taxes belong to Congress, not the president. Roberts continued, "No one has argued that this law gives the president the power to impose tariffs until this particular case." Translation? You're making this up as you go. Then came the moment that should have ended the case right there. Justice Neil Gorsuch, a Trump appointee, asked the government's lawyer a hypothetical. Could a future president use IEEPA to impose a 50% tariff on gas-powered cars to fight climate change? The lawyer, James Sauer, responded, "This administration would say that's a hoax. It's not a real crisis." Gorsuch cut him off. He wasn't asking about this administration. He was asking about the next one. If Trump can declare trade imbalances an emergency and impose unlimited tariffs, what stops the next president from doing the same thing for climate change, or gun violence, or healthcare costs, or literally anything they want? The government had no answer, because there is no limiting principle. If the president has this power, the president can do anything. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, another Trump appointee, pressed harder. Can you point to any other place in the law or any time in history where the phrase "to regulate importation" has been used to mean imposing tariffs? The lawyer tried to cite one case from the 1970s. Barrett wasn't having it. She asked again, "Can you identify any statute that used that phrase to give tariff authority?" The lawyer couldn't, because it doesn't exist. Justice Elena Kagan jumped in with pure mockery. "We've had cases recently about the president's emergency powers, and it turns out we're in emergencies all the time, about like half the world." She was making fun of them to their faces. Her point, if trade imbalances count as emergencies, then everything is an emergency. And if everything is an emergency, nothing is. Justice Sonia Sotomayor went straight for the throat. It's a congressional power, not a presidential power, to tax. You want to say tariffs are not taxes, but that's exactly what they are. Then she dropped the hypocrisy bomb. So Biden could have declared a national emergency on global warming and gotten his student loan forgiveness through without Congress. Brutal. The same people who said Biden couldn't forgive student loans without Congress are now saying Trump can impose $1 trillion in taxes without Congress. You can't have it both ways. Even the conservative justices were skeptical. The tone in that courtroom was unusual. Legal observers picked up on it immediately. Amy Howe from SCOTUS blog reported colleagues were speculating this could be 9-0 against Trump. More realistically, 6-3 or 7-2. But the direction was crystal clear. Trump is going to lose this case. Here's why that matters to you right now. The Supreme Court typically takes months to issue rulings, but this case is on an expedited schedule. Treasury Secretary Bessent warned in court filings that if they delay until June 2026, the refund bill could hit $1 trillion. So the court is under pressure to rule fast. Could be December, could be January, but it's coming soon. And when that ruling drops, everything changes overnight. If the court rules these tariffs are illegal, the government immediately owes refunds. Not might owe, owes. $195 billion collected so far. Potentially $750 billion if this drags out. And here's the legal reality nobody's talking about. The government doesn't get to say, we don't have the money. The government doesn't get to negotiate payment plans. When the Supreme Court issues an order, you comply, period. So where does that money come from? We'll get to that nightmare in a minute. But first, understand what really happened in that courtroom. This wasn't just about tariffs. This was about the separation of powers. The Constitution gives Congress the power to tax and regulate commerce, not the president. The founders did this on purpose. They didn't want one person able to impose taxes on Americans without their consent through their elected representatives. That's literally what we fought the Revolutionary War over. No taxation without representation. And yet here we are in 2025 with the president imposing the largest tax increase as a share of GDP since 1968, without a single vote in Congress, without debate, without your consent. The Supreme Court justices saw this for exactly what it is: an end run around the Constitution, a power grab. And based on what they said on November 5th, they're not going to allow it. Which brings us to the question that should keep you up at night. What happens when the Supreme Court rules against Trump and orders $750 billion in refunds? Where does that money come from? What happens to the economy when it does? That's what we need to talk about next. Let me show you exactly what happens when the Supreme Court rules, month by month, step by step. This isn't speculation. This is the timeline already in motion. Right now, December 2025. The Supreme Court is deliberating behind closed doors. 9 justices reviewing arguments from November 5th, writing opinions, counting votes. The decision could drop any day. When it does, one of 2 things happens. Scenario A: Trump wins. The tariffs are upheld as constitutional. Companies don't get refunds. You keep paying higher prices. Inflation keeps grinding away at your paycheck. The economy slowly weakens, but doesn't collapse. This is actually the least bad outcome. A slow bleed instead of a sudden hemorrhage. But based on what happened in that courtroom, this scenario is unlikely. Scenario B: Trump loses. And this is where everything goes to hell. January 2026. The Supreme Court ruling drops. 6-3. Maybe 7-2. The tariffs are declared unconstitutional. The president exceeded his authority under IEEPA. All tariffs imposed are null and void. Within hours, the Treasury Department owes refunds. How much? $180 billion collected through December 2025. Immediately payable. Not eventually, not over time. Now. But here's the problem nobody's talking about. That money is gone. The government already spent it on Social Security checks, military salaries, interest payments on the national debt, government operations. It's not sitting in a vault. It's spent. So how do you refund $180 billion you don't have? You have 4 options, all terrible. Option 1. Cut government spending by $180 billion immediately. That's 5% of the entire federal budget. Cut right now, not over 10 years. What gets cut? Veterans benefits, Social Security, the military? There is no $180 billion line item you can just delete. Option 2. Raise taxes by $180 billion. Congress can't even pass a regular budget. You think they're passing the largest tax increase in history in an election year? Not happening. Option 3. Borrow another $180 billion. Issue more bonds. Add to the national debt. This is the most likely option. But the debt to GDP ratio is already 120%. Credit rating agencies are watching. If they downgrade U.S. debt, interest rates spike across the board. Mortgages, car loans, credit cards, everything gets more expensive. Option 4. Print the money. Federal Reserve creates $180 billion out of thin air. Fastest solution. Also most dangerous, because printing money causes inflation, and inflation is already at 3%. Print $180 billion and watch it jump to 5 or 6%. Pick your disaster. All roads lead to pain. February 2026. The refund stampede begins. Costco files its refund claim with Treasury. Walmart files. Target files. Amazon, Home Depot, Best Buy, Toyota, Honda, Ford. Every major importer in America filing claims for billions. And here's the problem. Treasury has no process for this. They've never had to refund $180 billion before. The largest previous refund in U.S. history was $730 million for the harbor maintenance fee in 1998. That took 2 years to process. We're talking about 250 times that amount. And it's not just big corporations filing. Small businesses are filing too. The wine importer in California, the board game company in Minnesota, the fishing tackle shop in Florida, all filing claims, all demanding their money back. These aren't requests. These are court-ordered refunds. The government lost at the Supreme Court. These companies have a legal right to this money. Pay up or face contempt charges. But there's a twist that creates chaos. Not every company can file for refunds. Remember the December 15th deadline? Companies that didn't sue before their imports liquidated can't get refunds, even though the tariffs were illegal, even though the Supreme Court said so. They missed the window. Too bad. So you have two groups. Group A, companies that sued early, protected their rights, will get billions. Group B, companies that waited, didn't sue, get nothing. Group A gets rich overnight. Group B gets destroyed. Imagine you're Costco. You get a $4 billion refund. Your competitor across the street who didn't sue gets zero. You can now undercut their prices, steal their customers, drive them out of business. This isn't capitalism. This is chaos. March 2026. The full scale becomes clear. It's not just $180 billion. Tariffs kept collecting through January and February, while the legal process dragged on. Add another $60 billion. Total owed $240 billion. And the Supreme Court ruling applies to all tariffs going forward too. Anything collected after the ruling has to be refunded. The government is hemorrhaging money. April 2026. The economic effects hit like a freight train. Stock market crashes. Bank stocks down 20 to 30%. They're exposed to retail bankruptcies and credit card debt defaults. Regional banks start to wobble. Retail stocks down 40 to 50%. Department stores going bankrupt. Macy's, Kohl's, JCPenney. They can't compete with companies that got billion-dollar refunds. The dollar drops 10%. Foreign investors are spooked. The U.S. government can't manage its own finances. Treasury bonds suddenly look risky. Capital flees to Europe and Asia. GDP goes negative. First quarter 2026, minus 1.5%. Unemployment ticks up from 5.1% to 5.8%. Layoffs accelerating across retail and consumer finance sectors. And here's where the wealth transfer becomes obvious to everyone. Companies that got refunds are keeping the money. Remember, they raised prices on you in 2025 to cover tariffs. You paid those higher prices all year. They collected billions in extra revenue from customers. Now they get refunds from the government. They pocket the refunds. They don't lower prices back down. Why would they? You're still paying the higher prices. Prices are sticky. Up fast, down slow. Walmart gets a $10 billion refund. Did your Walmart prices drop? No. Target gets a $5 billion refund. Did your Target prices drop? No. The companies keep the money. Shareholders get dividends. Executives get bonuses. You get nothing. You already paid the higher prices in 2025. That money is gone from your bank account forever. The refunds flow to corporations. They get paid twice. Once by you, once by Treasury. May 2026. The convergence. Remember the consumer debt crisis? Credit card debt at $1.2 trillion. Delinquency rates at 3.05%. Black Friday shoppers buried in debt. That crisis is still developing. Now add the tariff refund chaos. Now add the stock market crash. Now add rising unemployment. Now add wobbly banks tightening credit. 4 separate crises converging into one. The perfect storm. Consumers can't pay their credit cards. Banks slash credit limits in response. Less available credit means less consumer spending. Less spending means companies do more layoffs. More layoffs mean more people default on debt. More defaults mean bigger losses for banks. The doom loop. Round and round. Faster and faster. June 2026. 6 months after the Supreme Court ruling. The economy is officially in recession. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Unemployment at 6.5% and climbing. Stock market down 20% from its peak. Consumer confidence at decade lows. And the government still hasn't finished processing refunds. Because there's no mechanism, no bureaucracy designed to handle this. Customs and Border Protection never built systems to refund hundreds of billions. Why would they? It's never happened before. So companies hire law firms to fight for their money. Law firms make billions in fees. Hedge funds buy refund claims from desperate small businesses at 80 cents on the dollar, then collect 100 cents from Treasury later. The whole thing is a feeding frenzy. Lawyers getting rich, hedge funds getting rich, corporations getting rich, while working families watch their savings evaporate and their jobs disappear. And through all of this, one question keeps getting louder. Who gets destroyed in this catastrophe? And who profits from it? Because I promise you, some people are going to make absolute fortunes while families lose everything. And you need to know which side you're on. Now let me show you exactly who loses everything and who makes billions. Because this isn't random. This isn't bad luck. This is a wealth transfer machine. And you need to know which side you're on. Let's start with the losers. The people who get destroyed. First, middle-class families. You lost $3,800 in 2025 paying higher prices because of tariffs. That money is gone. You're not getting it back. Now in 2026, you're losing more. Stock market drops 20%. Your 401k had $200,000. Now it has $160,000. You just lost $40,000. Your home value drops 10% as recession hits. You had $300,000 in equity. Now you have $270,000. Another $30,000 gone. Your job becomes unstable. Companies are laying off. You spend every day worried you're next. Credit card companies slash your limits. You had a $10,000 limit. They cut it to $6,000. Your credit utilization jumps from 30% to 50%. Your credit score drops 40 points immediately. Total damage to a typical middle-class family. $5,800 to $7,800 in direct losses. Plus the psychological damage of living with uncertainty, fear, instability every single day. Second, retirees on fixed income. Picture this. You're 68 years old. You retired 3 years ago with $400,000 in your 401k. You've been carefully drawing $20,000 a year to supplement Social Security. The market crashes 25%. Your 401k drops to $300,000. You just lost $100,000. At 68, you can't earn that back. You can't wait 10 years for markets to recover. You need that money now to live. So you have two terrible choices. Cut your spending by 25% and live on less. Or go back to work at 68, 69, 70 years old after you already retired. Let me tell you about Barbara. That's not her real name, but her story is real. She's 68 years old, taught elementary school for 40 years, retired in 2023 with $380,000 saved. She thought she was set. Today, her account shows $285,000. She's applying for jobs at Walmart at 68 years old because the system failed her. Third, retail and service workers. You work at Macy's or Kohl's or Target. Your store is struggling. Sales are down. The company announces layoffs. You're gone. You start looking for another retail job. There are none. The entire sector is contracting. 88,000 retail jobs were cut in 2025. More are coming in 2026. You're 45 years old with 20 years of retail experience. That experience is now worthless. The industry is dying. What do you do? Now let's talk about the winners, the people who profit from your pain. First, big corporations that sued early. Walmart paid $10 billion in tariffs over 2025. They raised prices on you to cover it. They collected that $10 billion from customers like you. Now they get $10 billion back from the Treasury. They keep both amounts. Pure profit, $10 billion. Target, same story, $5 billion in profit. Amazon, same story, $8 billion in profit. They get paid twice, once by you when you shopped, once by the government when refunds come. And they're not lowering prices back down. Why would they? You're already paying the higher prices without complaint. Second, law firms. Companies need lawyers to file these refund claims. Complex federal litigation. Hundreds of billable hours per case. Partners at major firms charging $800, $1,000, $1,200 per hour. Total legal fees for this crisis? $5 to $10 billion. Partners at these firms are making millions, while families are losing everything. Third, hedge funds. They saw this coming months ago. In January 2026, they shorted retail stocks. Macy's, Kohl's, JCPenney made billions as these stocks crashed 40 to 50%. They shorted regional bank stocks, made billions more as banks wobbled. And here's the really clever move. They're buying refund claims at discounts. Small companies can't wait years for Treasury to process their refunds. Hedge funds offer, "We'll give you 80 cents on the dollar today. Cash now." Desperate small businesses take the deal. Hedge funds collect 100 cents on the dollar from Treasury later. Pure arbitrage, pure profit on the backs of struggling small businesses. Fourth, wealthy people with cash reserves. While middle-class families are panicking and selling assets, wealthy investors are buying. Stocks at 20% discount? Buy. Real estate at 10% discount? Buy. Small businesses going bankrupt? Assets for sale cheap? Buy everything. Every economic crisis is the same story. Wealth transfer from the desperate to the prepared, from the poor to the rich. This is how it always works. Here's what you need to understand about the pattern. In 2008, we saw this exact same thing play out. The financial crisis hit. Bottom 80% of Americans lost 39% of their wealth between 2007 and 2010. The top 20% lost only 14%, and they recovered by 2011. The bottom 80%, many of them never recovered at all. By 2016, baby boomers still had less wealth than they had in 2007. A decade later, and they were still underwater. This crisis will follow the same pattern, maybe worse, because it's hitting at the same time as a massive consumer debt crisis, at the same time as retail sector collapse, at the same time as banking system fragility. The people at the bottom are going to get absolutely crushed. The people at the top are going to profit enormously. That's not a prediction. That's a guarantee based on how every crisis in American history has played out, unless you do something about it. And that's what we need to talk about next. What can you do right now, today, to protect yourself and your family? You can't stop this crisis from happening. The wheels are already in motion, but you can survive it if you act now. You can't stop this crisis, but you can protect yourself, and you need to start right now. Not next month, not after the Supreme Court rules. Now. Because you have maybe 3 to 6 weeks before everything hits. Here are 5 things you must do immediately. Action number 1, eliminate credit card debt and build cash reserves. This is the most critical thing on this list. Banks are going to slash credit limits in Q1 2026. They did this in 2020 when they cut $99 billion in available credit. It's going to happen again. If you're carrying balances, your credit utilization is about to spike. Example. You have a $10,000 limit with a $3,000 balance. That's 30% utilization. Acceptable. Bank cuts your limit to $6,000. Suddenly, you're at 50% utilization. Your credit score drops 40 points immediately. Your target? Get under 30% utilization by February. Simultaneously, build a cash cushion. 6 months of essential expenses if possible. 3 months minimum. In an FDIC-insured savings account, not stocks, not crypto. Cash. High-yield savings accounts are paying 4 to 5% right now. Action number 2, protect your job. Make yourself indispensable at work starting today. Take on extra projects nobody wants. Volunteer for hard assignments. Document every win. When layoffs come, you want to be the person they can't afford to lose. If you work in retail, consumer finance, or vulnerable industries, start looking for a new job now. Don't wait for the layoff notice. Update your resume today. Start networking. Reach out to recruiters. Get ahead before everyone else in your sector is competing for the same positions. Action number 3, avoid major purchases. Do not buy a car right now. Do not buy a house. Do not do major home renovations. Wait 6 to 12 months. Car prices might drop when demand crashes. Home prices might drop when people can't qualify for mortgages. If you can wait, you'll get better deals. Exception, true emergencies only. Your car is actually broken beyond repair. Your roof is literally leaking. Otherwise, wait. Action number 4. Diversify your investments if you can. If you're 100% in stocks, you're too exposed. Consider a more defensive allocation. This isn't financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But here's an example. 50% cash or bonds, 20% gold, 20% index funds, 10% international. Make sure you understand FDIC limits. $250,000 per account type per bank. If you have more, spread it across multiple banks. Action number 5. Educate yourself about how the system works. Learn how credit scoring works, how recessions work, how inflation works. Understand your rights, what debt collectors can legally do, what banks can change, your severance rights. Knowledge is power in a crisis. These actions won't make you rich. They won't protect you completely, but they will help you survive. And survival is the goal. Because this crisis is going to separate people into two groups. The difference isn't intelligence. It's not hard work. It's not luck. It's information and action. You now have the information. Will you act on it? Let me show you two people. Meet Sarah, 38 years old, marketing manager, $85,000 a year salary. She watched a video like this in November 2025 and saw what was coming. She paid down $4,800 in credit card debt over 6 weeks. She built a $12,000 emergency fund by cutting expenses aggressively. She updated her resume, took on highly visible projects at work. She wanted to buy a new car. She didn't. Kept driving her 2019 Honda. When layoffs hit her company in April 2026, she survived because she'd made herself valuable. When more layoffs came in May and June, she had cash to weather the storm. Her 401k dropped 20%. She lost money, but she survived with her job and credit intact. Now meet Mike, 42 years old, retail manager, $65,000 a year. He watched the exact same video Sarah watched. He nodded along, understood everything, even shared it with friends. But he didn't do anything. He thought, this won't happen to me. The economy always bounces back. He bought a new truck in March 2026, $45,000 loan. April 2026, his store closed. He lost his job. He tried to live on credit cards while job hunting. Maxed them all out trying to make payments. 3 months later, truck repossessed. Credit cards and collections. Credit score destroyed. Now he's applying for jobs at fast food restaurants. He lost everything. Same information, different choices, different outcomes. Which one are you going to be? Let me tell you what happens if you ignore this. June 2026, 6 months from now. Someone is going to watch this video again. They saw it back in December 2025 when it first came out. They watched it, nodded along, understood every word, maybe shared it, but they didn't act. They thought, I'll deal with it later. I'll start next month. Probably won't be that bad. Now they're sitting in their car in a parking lot. They just got laid off. Walked out with a box of desk items. Credit cards maxed at $18,000. Emergency fund, 0. 401k down 25%. Bills due in 3 days. No idea how to pay them. They pull out their phone and watch this video again. And sitting there, they think, I knew this was coming. I saw it months ago. Someone told me exactly what would happen and exactly what to do. I just didn't do anything. Don't be that person. You have information most people don't have. You know what's coming. You know when it's coming. You know what to do. The only question is, will you act? Will you be Sarah, who prepared and survived? Or Mike, who knew but did nothing and lost everything? Pick one action from this list right now. Just one. Do it today before you finish this video. Pay $500 toward your credit card. Move $1,000 into savings. Update your resume. Just do something. Because doing something is infinitely better than doing nothing. The Supreme Court could rule this week, could rule next month, but it's coming. When it drops, everything changes fast. You won't have time to prepare then. You prepare now, today. The storm is here. Don't say nobody warned you.